Welcome to All Things in the Name of Love. If you like this show, please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks. Welcome to another episode of All Things in the Name of Love. Today I have with me Brian Bernaman, who, among other things, well, first, heart-based, that's the criteria. But second, he's a well-being leader and the co-founder of Consciousness Action and You Being You. And I love that because, that's a quest that we're all trying to get to, is like, who are we at a deeper level? And so I wanted to start off with like how your journey went to get to this point.
Thank you so much, Sophia, for having me here. First of all, uh, you know, a lot of times when I try to share about my path, the first thing that I say is that I don't know what I did in a past lifetime to be born in the family that I was born into.
Mm-hmm.
I am really fortunate of that situation, at least my parents, um, that when I was a little kid, they started their own spiritual journey, which meant that by the time that I was like 10, 11, 12 years old, things in my house started to shift.
Okay.
And they started to bring into the house all of the things that they were learning and practicing. And suddenly we moved from, as an example, like eating dinner with the TV on to just having conversations. They were recommending different books to read all around spirituality, well-being. Little by little, they started to invite me and my siblings to go to classes with them.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
and, and we were free to say yes or no. Like, I mean, my siblings said no to most of it. I said yes because for some reason, this ended up being my path. Um, and one of the things that I realized was that I was a very shy person when I was a kid, really shy. I was kind of like okay with people, but also kind of like an outsider.
Mm-hmm.
I really love to spend a lot of time by myself. And one of the things that happened a lot was that I was an overthinker. Like I was getting stressed out all of the time because of all of the things that I didn't do or I should have done, and all of those things.
Yeah.
So those teenage years were an interesting thing of like some ways that I can see like, oh wow, I behaved in a way that I had a lot of confidence and strength, and in a lot of ways that I was super stressed out and super
Mm.
disconnected from myself. And one of the things that throughout my childhood and those teenage years that kept on happening was that, especially my parents, but everyone was asking me how I was. And I was always telling them I was okay, I was okay, I was okay. And my mom was always telling me, like, how are you really? And I didn't understand that at that
Yeah.
moment
Yep.
until when I was a teenager, I went after trying out a few different classes of different styles of yoga. Um, I went to a Tibetan yoga class, and suddenly that was life-changing. It was
Mm.
the first time ever that I actually felt my feelings.
Oh,
And I
wow.
realized what my mom was always asking me, how are you really? That I was always saying that I was okay, that I wasn't okay,
Right.
that I was super disconnected from my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that started a long journey that now it's over 20 years of exploration.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I remember that vividly. Like it was the first time that I actually felt that
Wow.
level of experience. I felt the energy moving in my body. And with that practice, I started to understand more and more and more about my feelings,
Mm-hmm.
about as well my thought patterns. I started seeing how by doing those practices, then suddenly things in my daily life started to change in the way that I wasn't reacting as much as I was because when I was 16, I started driving and I was uh, like I wasn't doing the right things, but I also got super stressed out and I had road rage.
Okay.
Um, and one day I remember very vividly how someone cut me off, and my usual reaction was, like "F you" or
Right,
whatever,
right, right.
and suddenly I felt like they just went past me, and I was like, "Ah, there's a lot of feelings happening."
Mm,
And that was it. So I stayed with the feelings, and that started to shift a lot of how I started to actually engage in my life.
hmm
And the other thing that happened almost simultaneously from that was that I went to a Reiki healer that my mom was going, and that session I was like, oh wow, like this is amazing.
hmm
And I asked the other person if he taught it, and he said that he did. So I asked him, okay, how does this work? And he explained there's all of these different levels. So I asked him, okay, how much is it? And he just stood there for a moment, and it seemed like he was talking with someone else. There was no one else in the room.
Mm,
And he just said, I'm being told that it's free for you because you're going to help a lot of people in the future.
mm,
So I was like, in that moment, I didn't know that much about connection with guides
right.
or other beings.
hmm
And at that moment, I was like, oh, cool, free training? Like, this is awesome.
Right.
Um, and then when I had like that first training, I was like, it was such an experience because I remember he had me having my hands together like this,
hmm
and then suddenly he did the initiation, and I felt this energy that just did like boom, and my arms open, and he was like, I had never seen that before. And I was
Wow.
like, and suddenly from there, like other things, I started to learn other things, and I started to explore as much as possible. Like this was like, oh wow, there's something here. So I
hmm
started to explore, and I started reading more, and I got a lot into Tibetan Buddhism, and I got a lot into a lot of other spiritual teachings, and I started watching as much as possible. I remember back then when the first What the Bleep Do We Know movie came out,
hmm
that we watched that at home, and I'm like, oh wow, this is what I'm experiencing. And I was like, I'm finding that. um, and at the same time, I'm studying, and I went to university. I studied two different bachelors, one in communications and one in journalism. And then I did my postgrad in neuroscience. I wanted to know a little bit more what I was experiencing, more
hmm
from a more spiritual lens. I wanted to explore it more on what's happening in the brain and how
hmm
to also communicate to people that are not open to
Yep.
spirituality.
Yep.
Um, and that really gave me a great understanding on a lot of different things that now I share with people. And then I'm going to fast forward a little bit. I decided to move from Argentina, and after a few years of living in a few different places around the world, I moved into a Tibetan Buddhist retreat center in the mountain in California, and I lived there for a few years.
Wow.
And that was kind of like a supercharging of my own journey because
hmm
suddenly I didn't have to do anything else other than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it was the first time that I wasn't living in a big city. I was living in a community of 27 people, middle of the mountain, redwood forest, with an amazing energy, and I'm practicing every single day. And then running retreats for other people, like all of these different things. Um, and suddenly the universe had another plan for me, so I had to live there. And after a while, I ended up in New Zealand, which is where I am now. And now for the last 15 years, I have been, like
Wow.
sharing all of this with people. And as I keep on going on my own journey of learning and understanding and unlearning and healing and exploring more things,
Mhm,
I support people with that.
mhm,
And lately it's been interesting because the last few years, as well as everything that I have been sharing, there's more and more people asking me to share some of the ways that um, I work with that were really helpful for me. That is through sound healing and through family constellations. Those two things seem to be at the moment quite big, and they were really helpful for me in my
mm,
own journey.
mhm.
Um, and now it's kind of like I love sharing all of this.
I love that. I love when you pick up multiple modalities and then you integrate them and start bringing them into what feels like it needs to happen in the moment. Um, it's just fascinating. I recently interviewed somebody else about family constellations, and it's such a fascinating healing process because I've in body talk, one of the things that can happen is you can tap into the ancestral line and karmic informations, and there's also something called matrices, and that can go into a whole realm of different things. But to actually have the conversation with the parent, even though it's not the parent, it's somebody holding space as the parent, and watching how that person like becomes the parent, like it's fascinating. I participated in one once, and I was just so fascinated that one of the people was actually acting like my dad, and I'm like, I didn't tell you anything about my, it was just so fascinating. and and the healing that came through it was not something I expected, because like, oh no, I've already done that healing, not to be arrogant, but like, when you think you've gotten to all the layers, there's another one. And
Yes.
that was a fascinating layer to explore that I hadn't ever thought of before.
Yeah. I remember the first time that I went to a family constellation. I was a teenager back in Argentina, and my Tibetan yoga teacher was a therapist in family constellation. And she told me, I'm doing this thing on Sunday. You should come. She didn't explain anything what it was. I was like, yeah, I'll go. Cool. Like, I was exploring, like, and I was open. So I was like, it's just doing this, and like, I'm sure that this is going to be good. But this was already a group that had been working together. So there was no even an explanation of what it was. We just went into a circle, really. And then this woman went into the middle of the circle with my teacher, and my teacher started asking her some things, and she just wanted to heal her relationship with her kids. And suddenly, my teacher started to point to some people and asking them to come into a circle. And she was like, okay, you're going to represent her ex-husband, you're going to represent like her daughter, you're going to represent her son, and then other people. And I started seeing all of this, and I thought that they were acting.
Right,
I didn't know yet that what it was, and
right.
suddenly she like they are interacting and doing some things, and suddenly she's like, "There's something missing here." So she asked this woman if she had another kid because she felt like there was another kid there, and she said no, but that she had a miscarriage.
Ah,
And for family constellation, those are part of the family.
mhm, mhm.
Um, and then she points at me to come into the circle to represent that unborn child. And
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
as soon as I stepped into the circle, I just suddenly felt this need or this feeling of going towards this strange woman and just going to her feet and just hug her. And in my head, I'm
Wow.
like, what's going on?
I know.
And then like she comes down and she hugs me, and I started crying and crying and crying. I'm like, in my head, I'm like,
Oh,
what's going on here? And then she says a couple of things, and I feel this relief. And then afterwards, she, like, my teacher asked me just to step back into the circle. And I was like, oh wow, this was spectacular, just
Yeah.
amazing. And then she explained that I was just, like tapping into the energy of that being. And I was like, oh wow, this is something that I want to explore more. So I did a lot of different sessions, both in groups, but also one-on-one.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and then at one point I was like, I need to learn how to do this. So I did. It was 5 years of training.
Oh, wow.
um it was a lot.
Yeah.
I loved it, because all throughout those 5 years I was also doing a lot of sessions on myself,
Hmm.
as well
Hmm.
as learning how to facilitate for others. um and I'm always fascinated by the healing that takes place for everyone, not only for the person that is like actually doing the constellation, but for everyone that is part of it. There's like I was doing at this festival, the one of the sessions, and after the session happened, someone said like, why did you choose me to be the mom? Because I wanted to heal my relationship with my mom, and the person that was actually doing the constellation was my sister. And I had no idea that they were sisters, but it
Wow.
chose this woman to represent the mom. And she just said, I just did my healing with my mom, and all that she did was representing.
Wow.
And I keep on telling people, if someone is in the space of a family constellation circle, you're doing the healing whether you are actually doing the constellation for yourself or for others. And I love, like I keep on being fascinated every time that I do this for a living, like part of
Hmm.
the things that I do. And I'm every time, like every single week, I'm doing a session with someone and I'm like fascinated by what happens. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Because also I heal. As I'm doing sessions for someone else and supporting someone else on their own journey, um, I see things for myself. I
Hmm.
heal myself. I I need to be so present when I'm
Hmm.
with someone else that, of course, that also supports my being.
Hmm.
um, so it's a beautiful, like journey of co-creation with
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
and of continuing healing, because as you said, like we have so many layers that we think, I have already healed this, and suddenly it's like again and again and again with another subtlety, with
Hmm.
something else in there. But I always say, until the moment that I'm fully realized or enlightened, or whichever word we want to use, there's more and more to heal and to unlearn.
Yep. I understand that really well. I have my inner child. I love her. She's amazing. Um, and there's a couple spots in my journey where she's gotten tripped up. And so about a couple months ago, I had this one experience where I actually, over the course of 3 nights, I was shown belief one, belief two, and then the mosaic around it. And I never had that complete of a picture. And so as I'm tuning into these different aspects and beliefs, they like disappear because I finally had like the full awareness of this lens through which I was seeing the world. And it just like, because I finally saw the whole thing, it was like, oh, now you're ready to release it. I was like, I've been working on this for like 10 years. It was amazing. So like this
Mm,
aspect of me isn't part of my beingness anymore, which is amazing. But some things, if they're really traumatic, they take a while, and that's okay.
yeah. One of the things that I often share with people is we all have trauma. Trauma not only just as a traumatic event, but trauma as an unprocessed experience or feelings.
Hmm.
Plus, there's a lot of intergenerational trauma. There's a lot of past life trauma. Um, so we have a lot to work with here.
Hmm.
Um, and it's fascinating as well for me, the how that subtlety of of what you're saying, like if I can go back to an experience, as an example, when I was a teenager, my grandpa died. I had a beautiful relationship with him. I loved him, and he died suddenly. And when I was in the hospital, um, waiting to see what happened, and the doctor came out, my body literally froze. I was in this position. I couldn't
Wow.
move. Like literally, like I remember my auntie, like she tried to like move me, like my body literally
Wow.
froze. And at that time I didn't have as many tools, but years
Mm-hmm.
later I was able to process and heal that.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that that's no longer, in a sense, part of my history. What happens, and this is what I tell everybody when I work with them, is that the charge that that had and the imprint that that had, that's no longer there. That's not
Right.
now. I'm not living my life through that trauma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now I'm able to remember my grandpa. I'm able to even go to the moment of his death, and there's no emotional charge. Now I'm able to be with it
Mm-hmm.
because that's part of my history. Now that doesn't now need to dictate my story moving forward, which is
Mm-hmm.
what with trauma, a lot of people are living their life through that.
Right.
There's, like from a Buddhist perspective, like my teachers used to say, we have all of these blockages, and those blockages are actually what we need to work with, because that underneath all of that, that's where our full potential is. So when we actually are willing to go to those places, and most of these places are unknown to us, we don't know
Right.
most of them.
Right.
um, this is why when we work with tools like family constellations or inner child work or different ways that we tap into the unconscious or into the energy field, we can actually heal those things that we don't know. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's, in a sense, like it's easier to know, like, oh, I don't have a good relationship with my dad, therefore I heal my relationship with my dad. But do I know about like a blockage or a trauma that happened because once my dad like said something that I didn't want to hear, and
Mm-hmm.
I repressed that, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we don't know those things, and
Right.
this is where, for me, being like falling in love with wanting to find those blockages has been huge in my journey, because this is like the I'm going towards them. I'm not waiting. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to be like, I'm okay, there's nothing, like, no, there's stuff.
Right. Right. Right.
And at the same time, I can choose what I heal, and I can choose for those blockages not to dictate my life. Because for
Mm-hmm.
most people, those blockages or those traumas are the buttons that are being pushed all of the time, the trigger points
Mm-hmm.
that then dictate how they are behaving.
Right.
And when we're able to actually relax those, then we can actually choose how we want to respond to life. So I always say, like,
Mm.
we can move from reacting to responding and living more consciously, living more present, and to choose how we want our lives to be, and knowing that we can rewrite our life. We can rewrite how we want the next chapters to be, and even not knowing, just being open to like the possibilities to unfold.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely feel that. I've had when you were showing the gripping of the hand, um, one of my dear sisters, Angela, she does a somatic healing. The way she describes the gripping is it's trapped light. And if we try to like go like this, it's never gonna ever move. But if we just hold our hands like this and we have this hand, eventually it's gonna open up.
Yeah.
And for me, I had this beautiful journey of numbing myself out because I'm super sensitive and I didn't know how to relate with the world with the degree of sensitivity I have. So I just numbed myself out for decades. And she comes along with this beautiful somatic practice, and all of a sudden I start feeling, and my body was just like, okay, I'm going to tell you everything all at once. And it got a little overwhelming. Now it's like this practice of every morning between like 1 and 4, my body will say, okay, it's time for your somatic practice.
Mm.
And it's
Yeah.
not even, it's not that I'm being, my sleep is interrupted or anything. It's just like my body wants to talk to me at that point. And so I'm just present to it because it wants to tell me things. And it's just so beautiful that I've gotten to this practice to the point where my body knows it wants me to, I'm giving it that space. Doesn't matter if I try not to set the alarm in the morning because I have that 4-hour frame where I'm
Mm.
actively, and I'm aware of it during the day too, but it really likes that quiet time when I'm able to hear the subconscious better.
Yeah.
And that
You
that just
know,
seems to be a thing.
I love doing somatic practice and sharing somatic practices. Like one of the things for me, as you were saying at the beginning, I loved for myself, like learning different modalities, different ways, because we need to work holistically. Like we are a whole being, like we are
Hmm.
mind, body, energy, spirit, emotions, like we are everything.
Hmm.
And some things we need this lens to work from it, and then another one, and this other way. We need to find the right way for us. And this is one of the things that I share with everyone. We need to find what it is that we resonate with at the moment and do that, because perhaps at the moment I need to do something more physically, like somatic focus. And then after I do that, then it's like, okay, perhaps now I need to do something with meditation or
Hmm.
something with family constellation or something with some, like, it doesn't matter what it is. It's
Right.
about going with what we resonate with. And key of that is for me is um, reconnecting with feelings. Like most people haven't, like they don't know how to feel. Like I know
Right.
that I was one of them. Like
Right.
we are trained to
Me too.
think, and as you were saying, we are taught to numb ourselves.
Yeah.
We're taught to dissociate. We're taught to escape as well our
Hmm.
feelings. This is like most of the addictions are just a way of escaping
Yeah.
the feelings. And one of the things as well, what you were just sharing is um, the fear for a lot of people, and this is completely subconscious, is that when they open up a little bit to feeling, they're going to have what you had, that is that overwhelm of a lot of different experiences.
Hmm.
Um, this is why everyone is different, and I always encourage people to do something that is going to support them where they are, and
Hmm.
not like if someone is okay with allowing a lot all at once, great. Most people perhaps it's like, okay, just a little bit, just a
Right.
little bit, just a little bit,
Oh yeah.
and to, in a sense, retrain that capacity to feel and to hold a lot of these experiences.
Hmm.
Because the more that we feel, the more that we're able to not only feel our stuff, we feel other stuff as well from other people and from
Hmm.
our environment.
Right.
And one of the things that I realized a long time ago was my capacity for feeling my own experience gave me much better understanding on how to feel someone else's experiences. Therefore, every time that I work with people, it's in a sense easier because I'm actually able to feel what they are feeling.
Hmm.
So then I know like, oh, okay, this person has a blockage here, this
Hmm.
blockage here.
Hmm.
So I'm able to feel it. Therefore, I'm able to support them better. And I know that for a lot of people, being more empathetic in a sense of feeling what others are feeling can be quite a lot. And
Hmm.
for me, it's a superpower. Like someone that is empathetic is a superpower
Hmm.
because now we're able to relate to others in a more understanding way, in a more
Hmm.
compassionate way. And one of the things that I have learned through my own journey is that since we all have all of these traumas, all of these blockages, all of these things happening that are mostly unconscious,
Hmm.
why would I judge anyone for what they are doing?
Hmm.
The more understanding that I have of all of these things, every time that someone does something that I would normally judge, now I see it from a the lens of not only being compassionate towards that person, understanding this person is either hurting, this person has all of these blockages, this person has, experiences that they weren't able to process, and what they learned is that you either shout, you either like go to violence, you do a lot of different things
Hmm.
that disrupt relationships, or like whatever type of relationship or spaces. That's what they know. They are not doing
Hmm.
that because they are bad people. They are doing
Right.
that because that's what they know. And for me, that also, that change has been huge in the way that I relate to others, because I was super judgmental as a kid. And now I'm like, okay, I can see very differently.
Hmm. No, I can understand that completely because like there's a couple points that I want to say, but like the judging part, I'm at the point where if I feel a judgment, I ask myself, what is within me that is getting triggered by the need to judge somebody else? And then the comment about anger, I've noticed that anger is probably the only, up till now, um, like societal accepted emotion, which is really interesting because the anger is actually so much deeper. It's like not being heard. That's pretty much what anger is not being heard. So it's actually sadness that's been repressed and repressed and repressed to the point where it becomes anger. And it's really fascinating. I'm being pulled into my dad. My dad, amazing, gentle soul, incredible empath, beautiful outdoorsman, had no idea how to experience his feelings. So he yelled when he was frustrated, um, and he became obese because he couldn't express his feelings in a healthy way. He didn't have any tools that we have. So he ended up dying from complications of first pancreatitis and then a staph infection,
Mm,
um, because he couldn't feel his feelings. I mean,
mm,
he literally couldn't feel pain in his body. That's how numbed out he
yeah,
was.
yeah. And that majority of people, this is one of the things on why um, I I aim all of the time to share more and more about these things, not about me so much, but about the capacity that we all have to change
Hmm.
and to reconnect, in whichever way that is, and with whoever that is.
Hmm.
Because I know that what you just said, that this happens for most people,
Yeah.
especially men, but a lot of women as well. Like the
Hmm.
thing that I have found throughout this last 20 years is that um, in most of the things that I do in the well-being or spiritual world, it's like 95% women, like attending to those things.
Hmm.
Um, there's something in there, but as well, like I see it so much because I work both with men and women. Um, a lot of men have been taught not to feel in feelings because that's
Yeah.
weak. Like
Right.
there's a weakness that is attached to feeling, therefore they're not going to feel. Not only about not crying, or like, or expressing love in a nice, gentle way.
Hmm.
There, it's an even more of a lived experience. I don't feel to stay strong, like,
Right.
and to be resilient, to survive. And for me, being resilient is actually being able to have the capacity to be with all of those feelings.
Hmm.
Because then, as you say, like, you create a lot of these things that if you don't listen to your body, and your body keeps on knocking on the door, uh, we majority in our society only listen to the body when it had already screamed for years and years,
Right.
and you didn't listen, and suddenly it's like, oh well,
Right.
that's like now a huge thing. You're going to be in the hospital, or
Hmm.
or you die,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the things for me all of the time with my life is to be able to get people to understand not to wait until we hit rock bottom in terms of
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
We can do all of these things preemptively. Like we can actually work on ourselves. We can prevent those things from happening. And
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, we can have a beautiful life. We can
Mm-hmm.
actually, like enjoy the present moment, being present, having gratitude, feeling expansive, feeling abundant,
Mm-hmm.
and doing all of that healing work because we are able to be in touch. Um, for me, it's fascinating a lot of times how I keep on seeing people and I keep on telling them, don't wait until that moment. But it's for a lot of people, it's so ingrained that they are not
Yeah.
going to invest their time, energy, or money to do something for their well-being.
I know it's such a fascinating thing. Like I've always loved learning, and when I started doing healing sessions, there was part of me that felt guilty, right?
Mm,
Because it's like, oh, well, that's a lot of money, but wait a minute. Instead of spending it on education, I'm spending it on learning myself. Like it's an internal learning as opposed to the external. And once I got that shift of, oh, wait a minute, I'm actually learning who I am on a deeper level. And what is more important than that? What's more, like if I'm as I am a spirit in a human body, this vessel is why I can exist on this planet in the physical. So, what is more important to me than making sure that I am in coherence? I am in my optimal state of health. And if I'm not, what are the tools I can draw upon to bring me into that coherence?
mm.
Because
Yeah,
without it, without it, I can't exist. And, you
yeah,
know,
that's the thing that it's that as a society, I think that, and we're getting there. There's
mhm,
there's shifts in consciousness that are happening, on that, on understanding that if I'm not well, like nothing is going to work. Like if
right.
I don't do the work on myself, on the unlearning and the learning, whichever modality, whichever technique that is, whichever way that is for each of us on our unique journey, we need to understand that important aspect that is like spending on ourselves. And I don't mean just money, because there's a lot of things that we can do for free.
Hmm.
Like there's things that yes, it costs because people need to make a living.
Right.
Um, and at the same time, it's what you're saying is what's a priority, like we need to understand priorities in terms of that. If I am not well, then the house, the car, like the work, the holidays, anything that I'm spending money on, it's not going to be, like that's not the priority. If I am not
Right.
well, if I'm not going to be able to actually go on holidays and enjoy them because I'm stressed about work,
Hmm.
like then what's the point on spending all of those thousands of dollars on the holiday?
Hmm.
So there's a lot of things that like that we need to shift, and I know for myself, like if I look back through the years, I don't even want to count how much money I have spent on all of the trainings, on all of the courses, on all of the retreats, and all of the
Oh,
classes
yeah.
that I have done. Like
Hmm.
I don't know, it's been money not only well spent, it's been amazingly well spent. And
Yeah.
I love the fact that, again, as I said at the beginning, I'm so fortunate that through the family that I have, that I've been able to start this at such a young age,
Hmm.
because it gave me a lot of time and space that now I'm, like I'm super young still, but I have over 20 years of this.
Right. Right.
um, and I tell people, like I work with people that are in their 70s, in their 80s. Like we have time,
Yeah.
whichever age we are, we have time to
Hmm.
work on ourselves and to heal and to do this. And one of the things that, Sophia, I realized a long time ago was for me to be able to share, I need to understand more points of views in how to talk and how to relate to people.
Mm-hmm.
Because for most people, the biggest thing is they need to feel drawn to something. And
Mm-hmm.
if I just talk on a, let's call it a more spiritual and esoteric language, a lot of people are not going to even want to hear
Right.
it.
Right.
Um, and so I started to realize and to learn more different ways of communicating.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this has been part of my path, studying communication, journalism, all of that. Um, to be able to relate to people where they are and to be able to talk to them where they are. And this
Mm-hmm.
is why now, like, as well, not only I can work with individuals and more on the spiritual well-being space, I can work with businesses. I can teach, as I have been for the last 5 years, teaching at university. There's ways that I know that in those spaces I use certain language and certain words that I
Mm-hmm.
don't use in the other space.
Right.
I'm
Right.
not going to, I don't talk about, like the energetic world in the same lens there,
Mm-hmm.
but I can talk about the quantum physics.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk about the neural pathways of what's
Yep.
happening.
Yep.
At the end of the day, we're doing the same thing. It's
Right.
just different language.
I'm
It's
laughing
so
because I
important
do
with
the
that.
same thing. I do the same thing because like for some reason frequency and resonance works better to describe what I do than talking about Chinese traditional medicine or Ayurvedic or Aboriginal or kinesiology. Doesn't like all those things combined is kind of like wow. But if I say okay, it's a frequency
Mm.
and it does retrain the neural path, it's like oh okay, that I've heard those words before.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is why, again, even it's just something as in some spaces, I don't use the word meditation, even though
Mm-hmm.
I'm guiding meditation practices. I don't use the word meditation. I'm using
Yep.
the word mindfulness
Yep.
or present, being present.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for me, it's a lot of times, for me as someone that wants to support art and wants to help,
Mm-hmm.
wants to be part of the change, I need to figure out what's the entry point to actually have people relate to what I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
whether they work with me or not. Like, I
Right.
don't care about
Right.
that.
Right. Right.
The right people are going to resonate with me and are going to work with me. I don't
Mm-hmm.
need to, like, to do anything for that. Mm, I want to support people into supporting themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the things as well with the healing journey that I have been all of these years is understanding no one else can do this for me. I can go and
Right.
see as many like healers and like no one heals me. I heal
Mm-hmm.
myself.
Mm-hmm.
I can be supported in
Right.
my healing,
Right.
just like I support others. I can,
Mm-hmm.
someone can hold the space, can allow me to relax or to feel safe enough to do that. But I know this. When someone tells me like after a healing or something, oh wow, thank you so much. I'm like, I didn't do it. Like you did it.
Mm-hmm.
I just supported you in doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is part of that. I think that one of the things that I love about doing this job is that I can actually be there supporting someone to support themselves, to heal themselves, to reclaim their own power and their capacities that they have to actually do that for themselves.
Mm.
And like, and how I like every time is different.
Yeah.
What you were saying, like I tell sometimes to people, do you want like a specific thing like Reiki, or do you just want, like whatever is coming? Because
Mm-hmm.
I have done so many things that nowadays, like everything is intuitive for
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, I have all of these different tools and modalities that I have learned. I don't like majority of the time. I tell people I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just allowing whatever needs to come through to come through. I literally have no idea.
I love that.
And
I love that
but
because
some
like
people need to know.
No, what you do know is that you are a facilitator for whatever wants to come through. And I've had to differentiate that too. That's why I was laughing, is because I remember being in a nail salon a few months ago, and the woman said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I do this healing, and like I don't know what I'm doing because like I don't know what's going to come through me." And she was like so confused because like even though I've studied it for going on 4 years now, um, I don't know what's coming through. I have no idea what's going to come
Yeah.
through. I know that I'm open as a facilitator, and that's all I need to know.
Yeah.
And
And it's that I think that, it's one of the things that that I often say to people. Like I literally, like, most of the time I have no idea what I'm doing. I know what I'm like, I tell them I know what I'm doing as I am holding the space and I am opening the facilitation, as I am supporting your healing. I
mhm,
don't know what specific thing is going to come through.
right, right.
And that also opens, and I know that for some people, they are going to be more receptive to me saying, I don't know what I'm doing, because they understand.
Mhm,
For other people, I cannot say that
right.
because some people need the reassurance that I know what I'm doing, because they are placing their, their being in my hands,
Right.
and I need to support them. So there's again like the languaging and who can I
Yeah.
say something to and who
Yeah.
I can. I had this, like, I remember once, someone that was like working doing some marketing for me, and she was like going through a lot of the testimonials and going through a lot of the work that I have done, and she's like, wow, you're amazing. Why are you not saying that you're this amazing? And I'm like, but I'm not doing anything.
Right.
Like, I'm just being me, and
Right.
people are healing themselves. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's not putting me down. It's not saying,
No, I
like, I am
know.
amazing.
Right.
I, I'm just not going to, to glorify myself for someone else's healing that they did on themselves. And yes, I supported them, whether that was like a one-time thing or like a journey of months or
Mhm.
years. Like, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
It's I'm walking alongside them. They are doing their own healing. So
Right.
I'm not going to go out there and saying like, look at all of these people that I healed. Like, I healed their
Right.
relationships. I healed their trauma. I healed, like,
Right.
no, that was them. Like,
Mhm.
I did my part, which is important.
Yep.
They did their own thing.
Right.
So there's like, I think that especially nowadays with this world that, like, we need to promote things, and like, and we need to share.
Mhm.
Like, I feel much more comfortable doing this, having conversations like what we are having now,
Yeah.
than than like just posting something that makes me like seem like, like better than someone
Right.
else just
Right.
because of that. It's like, I'm amazing and I know what I'm doing and I know that
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
great at what I do.
Right.
um there's also other people that are great,
Yeah.
and like, and it's a game that we need to play, of course,
Mhm.
now. And at the same time, I'm like, okay, like, like, I make a living doing this.
Mhm.
I like I know that I'm good because I'm able to make a living doing this for
Mhm.
the last, like, 15 years. So
Mhm.
I know that what I have to offer and my gift is amazing, just like everyone's gift. And we just need to figure out and what that is for us. And
Mhm.
it's ever evolving, ever changing. And as I said before, like, I am fortunate that because I've been doing this since I was young,
Mhm.
that I just found this sooner.
Right. Right. Which is so beautiful because like I know we're all on our different paths. I knew I was going to be a doctor when I was 10. I just didn't want to cut anybody open. When I was 10, body talk didn't exist. And I grew up on the East Coast of on the East Coast of the United States in Connecticut. So like I didn't come across body talk until 2013. And by then I got a PhD and thought I was doing my calling because I knew like what can I study long enough to get a PhD, and it was history because I love studying people. Not my calling, not my calling. Grateful for the gift, but like my calling is to help animals. But I didn't want to be a vet because I didn't want to cut anybody open. So, back when I was little, that didn't exist. So now it does, and I'm so grateful because as we keep raising our consciousness, more and more tools come out, and we get to do more deep work on ourselves and for the collective, and it's just really amazing.
Mm. Yeah, and with that, it's like it's always about right timing and
Hmm.
as understanding. Like I go back and I was like, I knew from when I was 4 years old that I wanted to be a journalist, and I became a journalist, and I worked as a journalist for a few years. Um, and I'm grateful for that because then that gave me a lot of tools as well to be able to talk to people and to be able to like run workshops and retreats and give talks and teach at university. Like it gave me a level of communication and confidence. Like yes, of course, at that moment everything was in Spanish because I was living in Argentina. um, but still it was like up until that moment that I was super shy, and I changed through a lot of learnings and things as well as from what I was healing.
Hmm.
Um, Now I haven't been a journalist now in over 15 years, and I can be like that. I'm so grateful for that,
Hmm.
and that was what I needed at that time.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
now I'm able to choose what I want to be
Right.
and who I want to be, how I want to be. And if in 1 year or 5 years or 10 years, suddenly, like, I feel like I need to be something else, then I'll go and I'll do that.
Hmm. I love that. Mm. Brian, this has been such an amazing, wonderful, inspiring conversation, and I'm so grateful that you accepted my request to have this conversation. And I'm going to ask one more question, and that is, how can people find you?
People can find me in the energy field. No, as
That
well.
too. That too.
They can find me through my name, Brian Bernaman. That's either my website, brianbernaman.com, or on social media under Brian Bernaman. They can find me through Conscious Action. That's Conscious Action NZ as New Zealand as well. In all of the networks. My podcast, the Conscious Action podcast by Brian Bernaman as well. It's on all of the platforms on YouTube. Um, and as I always say, if someone resonates with what I'm saying, with what I've shared, and if someone resonates with me and my energy, um, check out what I do. Reach out if you have any questions. I always work mostly with people like with everything personalized, whether that's people or businesses. I do everything personalized. I come together with people, whether that's online or in person, and we try to understand if we are a right fit and then what needs to happen.
Mm.
So again, if someone is interested, reach out. And as well, I know so many people that if I am not the right person, I'm able to always recommend others.
Mm. Thank you so, so much for your beingness,
uh,
for your work in the world, and your time. I am so grateful to know you.
Thank you, Sophia, so much for inviting me, and again for sharing and for the space to allow me to share as well, and for what you're doing. As we all keep on doing our own work, we are doing the work as well for everyone. And
Hmm.
the more that we're able to as well share and have conversations, and then have more content and put it out there, that's going to support others. So thank you so
Hmm.
much.
No, you're so welcome.